Now, before the weekend, we spoke about 3 additional cretins who were on trial at Westminster Magistrates Court for their part in a WhatsApp group discovered by police when examining Wayne Couzens' mobile phone after he killed Sarah Everard. PC William Neville, PC Jonathon Cobban and former PC Joel Borders are all accused of sharing grossly offensive messages, including joking about rape, beating people and tasering children and animals. On Friday, former PC, 45-year-old Joel Borders told Westminster Magistrates Court, "My image was perfect and I behaved perfectly," referring to his image and behaviour as a police constable, and actually accused prosecutors of trying to criminalise innocent police officers over jokes that they had made in a private group. And as I've said before, I do agree that we all have an expectation of privacy, but as I've also said, these are police. If these messages are more than the throwaway type of comment or joke, then it could indicate something much deeper and of much more concern. Just look at Wayne Couzens and David Carrick, for an example. The group WhatsApp chat called Bottle and Stoppers comprised of 7 police officers who had transferred from the Civil Nuclear Constabulary to the Metropolitan Police. Now, the CNC is basically an all-armed police force. Therefore, practically every member of the force is allowed to carry a gun. Knowing he is a former plod, you will likely have thought he left after being implicated in the group, but it's said that he actually left the Met before the messages were uncovered. In fact, before Wayne Couzens committed his crimes. During cross-examination by his lawyer, Nicholas Yeo, on Friday, Borders told the court that he was well thought of on the job and his joke messages had been blown out of proportion. "I was an exemplary officer," he said. "I always turned up to work early. I always dressed smart, made sure my boots were clean. My image was perfect and I behaved perfectly with people. I know that's me saying this, but I was well thought of on the job." Nothing like blowing a bit of smoke up your own arse, is there? Borders claims that he was naive when he first joined the Met in February 2019, but handling delicate matters changed his sense of humour. And because this is an ongoing trial, I've got to be careful what I say, but I have my own thoughts about a copper being naive and being allowed to handle a gun in the Civil Nuclear Constabulary. I'll say no more about that. Borders said his jokes were not intended to offend the people who they were about and gave the example of a joke he made about his mother, who has dementia after she suffered a fall and broke her hip a few months ago. During an exchange with the prosecutor, Jocelyn Ledward, Borders said, "You are trying to criminalise innocent police officers." Pointing to his former colleagues in the dock, he said, "Those officers in there are probably going to lose their jobs just because you take exception to certain jokes." When PC Jonathon Cobban took to the witness box, the court was told how Cobban described a hospital patient that he was dealing with as an attention-seeking, self-harming fag, and Hounslow, a diverse area of London, as a Somali shithole. Cobban said that, like many emergency service workers, he had developed a dark sense of humour. In what I call an attempt of victim blaming, when Cobban was asked about jokes about police performing sex acts on domestic violence victims, where he wrote in the group chat, "That's right, DV victims love it, that's why they are repeat victims, more often than not." He described this comment as quite obviously sarcastic and a way of venting frustrations after attending domestic abuse calls where callers would not cooperate with police once they arrived. Cobban said that in these cases, more often than not, the allegations are false. PC William Neville was accused of acting out a rape fantasy when he spoke in the group chat of a time that he pinned down a 15-year-old girl going mental on the floor, describing it as a struggle snuggle. He claimed it was a slang term for a Home Office approved restraint technique. "It was a technique that I've been taught in the Metropolitan Police Service," he said. "It's very similar to a term used, Met Bundle. A Met Bundle is a multiple officer restraining technique where multiple officers restrain a person who perhaps has extreme strength And the term struggle snuggle is just a single officer restraining someone, if that makes sense. Given the context I've just explained to the court, I don't see it as being offensive in any way.
Rape is such a horrible word, though. It's such a harsh, brutal, awful word. Rape. That's why I prefer to call it a struggle snuggle.
And when challenged about his description of someone he hospital guarded as an attention-seeking, self-harming fag, he said he had no evidence the person was gay. He said, "Yes, I said fag, but that was a non-targeted derogatory comment, but it was literally no more than a name-calling exercise." Go guys, now this is a copper, so he would likely have been coached by the Police Federation rep with what to say in court. So from now on, if you get nicked for hate crime, try it. It wasn't a hate crime, it was a non-targeted derogatory comment, but it was literally no more than a name-calling exercise. See if it works for you. But it doesn't. Neville accepted he had received extensive training on diversity and equality and dealing with victims, but denied he had this in mind when sending the messages. So if it's so easy for his diversity training to slip his mind, how easy do you think it is for his restraint technique training to slip his mind, or his weapons training to conveniently slip his mind? He told the court, "We've spent more time looking at the code of ethics in this courtroom than I have in my whole career." And there we go. Maybe that's one of the big issues here that the police can fix right away. I've been in jobs in my life where we have to know and understand something. For example, food hygiene. When I was a chef, if I forgot to keep the chopping boards and knives separate between fish and meat, I could kill somebody. But I never forgot, and thankfully never killed anyone either. But the food hygiene certificate must be taken often during your career as a chef as things change. And so we are tested on it at times by some of the places where I worked to ensure that I knew it and remembered it. The food hygiene regulations likely change far more than the police code of ethics, so why are the police forces not making sure that the plod they hire are well versed and tested on it to make sure that they know it and remember it? Owen Graham, a Metropolitan Police sergeant who worked with Neville from January 2020, described Neville as an excellent officer who told the court that struggle snuggle was a term used in officer training. He said, "I've also heard struggle cuddle. It refers to a bear hug type restraint used on vulnerable people. It's an informal term used by instructors, and I'd say it's used on quite a few occasions, quite commonly in 2009 when he joined the service, but perhaps not as much in the past 3 or 4 years. It's not an expression even used as a joke. It's just a way the instructors help us remember."
Rape is such a horrible word, though. It's such a harsh, brutal, awful word. Rape. That's why I prefer to call it a struggle snuggle.
Wow. Struggle snuggle used in training. Now these have already admitted to having dark sense of humour, and most people with a dark sense of humour would probably have heard of Jimmy Carr and likely watch him. The term struggle snuggle is a term that he uses in jokes to describe rape. If it refers to a bear hug, then why not use the term bear hug? I think this exposes something much deeper, I fear, something we already know anyway, but to more people maybe, that the training for these people supposed to protect and serve is certainly not fit for purpose, especially if they're using terms linked to rape as ways of describing bear hugging someone. Now the trial continues and will re-adjourn on September the 26th, where we will pick this up.